Accident victims like you deserve better. A husband and wife were rear-ended, and insurance offered them $10,000. We litigated the case and got them $375,000. Qualified expert attorneys can get you more. Call Zirkin and Smerling today.
Good afternoon, Baltimore City. This is City Voters Live Podcast. I'm your host, Desmond Stenney, coming to you on this beautiful President's Day. In keeping of this day of honoring two prolific public servants that contributed so much to our democracy, we wanted to share with you a recent interview done with a local public servant, Councilman Zeke Cohen, representing District 1, and also candidate for City Council President. Given the recent dust-up involving the city's redistricting process, we have seen Council President Nick Mosby introduce his own charter amendments that would reshape that process and revise mayoral veto powers during the redistricting process. Councilman Cohen's legislation takes it a step further by redefining community input with district map creation. The good councilman met with City Voters Live this past Friday to take us through his proposed charter amendments. And today we bring to you that interview in its entirety. Good morning, Councilman. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning, Desmond. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fine, sir. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. And just before we get started, I wanted to ask how the kids holding up on the campaign season.
Oh, they're doing good, except that no school at city schools today. So my daughter is running wild at home, and my wife's got her. She's doing teletherapy upstairs, and so I'm gonna get her for the afternoon. So other than that, though, they're doing great.
Doing the great. Good. We'll enjoy it. While they're still super excited to see Dad every time he walks into the room. I tell you, when they hit the teen years, I'm an old guy, so I got older kids. When they hit the teen years, they still love you the same, but the enthusiasm, you just don't feel it as much. So embrace all of that you're getting right now, sir.
Look, man, it is what is keeping me motivated these days. Nothing better, and I got double trouble because I got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So awesome. You know the deal.
Oh yeah. You're in the fun years right now. Good stuff. Well, we saw this week that you had introduced some legislation around the redistricting process. Tell us about the genesis of that legislation, what you saw as an issue. Obviously, there was extensive coverage on the redistricting process this year, and what did you see that sparked your motivation for introducing legislation?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, Desmond, I start with the premise that people, the citizens of this city, should pick their representatives, not the other way around. And what I saw during this last redistricting process was a whole lot of politics around which districts were going to be where, and was it going to be the mayor's plan? Was it going to be the city council president's plan? And what I felt like we ended up with was a product that did not reflect the voices of Baltimoreans. I mean, essentially what happened is the mayor produced a map. It was not clear whether they had done any kind of community outreach, whether they'd done any listening sessions or town halls. It sort of felt a little bit arbitrary. I think to their credit, I think what they were trying to do is make sure the districts, in addition to being contiguous and having roughly the same amount of people in them, also that each of the 14 districts had an anchor institution, because we know in the past, some of our districts have not. And when I look at some of my colleagues, they've got a really tough spot to try to represent a district where there's a whole lot of concentrated poverty and not much in terms of anchors or business institutions. And so I think that was the theory that the mayor brought into the map. However, it didn't feel like it had reflected a lot of community engagement, which I think is really critical to getting a better product out of a redistricting map. And so, to his credit, I think the city council president and the city council attempted to do some town halls, some outreach. In my opinion, not nearly enough.
The community charrettes, yeah.
Yeah, the charrettes, at least do something that gave communities an opportunity to weigh in. And I think came up with a map that, again, was not, in my opinion, reflective enough of what our city would have wanted if we had had more time, but at least was, I think, a step further. What ended up happening is that the mayor, the city council proposed a map, the mayor vetoed it, and this was actually a pocket veto. To explain to your listeners what that means, essentially, in the normal veto process, we, the city council, get an opportunity to override the mayor's veto. That's typically how it works in any kind of democratic structure, right? The executive can veto, but then the legislative branch gets an opportunity to override the veto. In a pocket veto, that does not happen. So the way that our charter is currently written, there was not enough time for the council's veto to have enough meetings that it would be effective. In other words, the mayor's plan just basically went into effect because the mayor was able to run out the clock.
Because of the nature of the veto. Let me take a second to explain that to the listeners. But a pocket veto meant that the hearing to the vote to override a veto can only happen in certain council meetings, right?
That's right.
Is that correct? Am I correct there? And you can't hold, so the council can't call a special meeting to hold a veto vote, override vote, right? So the timing of the mayor's veto left it so that there would be no more regular meetings in which to hold a veto vote, right? And that was interesting, right?
That's right. And there had been some back and forth about that between the mayor and the city council president. And, it was really disappointing because I think for the communities that did participate, there were several in my district, Upper Fells Point, Patterson Park, and I'll talk about my district in a minute. But I think for the communities that showed up and had input, they were basically just ignored. And the mayor went with his original map, which again, and I feel like you and I continue to have this conversation, Desmond, reflects some real power imbalance within our government. And so to me, it's not about Brandon Scott. It's about the structure of governance that we have here in Baltimore, which is so strongly, such a strong executive system, so strong in the mayor's office that ultimately, in this case, it really became, what's the point of having a city council and what's the point of having any kind of community input? Because all of the input was essentially ignored. Yeah. And that, I think, left communities feeling not only frustrated, but disenfranchised, because why am I even going to show up, participate, go online, go to the town halls and say what I have to say if nobody's going to listen and all of our suggestions are going to be ignored?
Right. At the end of the day. I hear you.
So, so what then happened was that Council President Mosby proposed a charter amendment that would have lengthened the period in which the redistricting process would happen, because I think we all agreed it was way too short, and also would have eliminated the ability for the mayor to pocket veto the map. So in other words, the mayor can still veto, and the mayor has a strong veto, but they could not do what Mayor Scott did this time, which is to simply veto it with not enough council meetings left for our override to go into effect.
Right.
So I think that was a step forward. What my legislation seeks to do is take it one more step forward, which is to really remove the political interference of any of us, whether it's the council president, the mayor, or the city council members, because I don't think it's appropriate for the people whose districts are going to be determined to have much influence over what the map looks like.
Right.
And so what my legislation does is it authorizes a commission consisting of residents, non-politicians. It can't be an elected official. It can't be a lobbyist. It can't be a city government employee, but regular Baltimoreans, 14, one for each district, plus one that is an at-large. Those 15 people get together. They select two experts. So that could be like a political scientist, someone with GIS or map making capacity.
Sure.
And they also select the consultant who is ultimately going to draw the map.
Right.
They then have the charge to go into each of the 14 districts and do at least one listening session, one town hall, to try to gather as much input as possible from communities to then go back and determine a map.
Right.
They then create the map with the support of the GIS consultant, the guy who's able to, or guy or gal who's able to cut up the distance.
Get in the ArcGIS and do their thing, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? And to be clear, everything about the map is the same in its requirements, which all has to do with the Voting Rights Act, which means that the districts have to be roughly equal. They have to be contiguous. So in other words, you can't have District 1 here, but also somewhere up in North Baltimore. It has to be uniform. You can't obviously scale it toward any racial group. You can't gerrymander the map and have concentrated white or black or Hispanic, or right. You can't do any of that in determining the map. It has to be constitutional. But they produce a map. They then send it. The commission, after the commission gets the map, they then send it to the mayor and the city council. The mayor and the city council can offer input, but they can't veto it. They don't vote on it. They don't have the authority to determine the final product. It goes back to the commission, and the commission votes and creates the final map. Right. And to me, Desmond, that reflects a process that puts power back in the hands of people and not politicians, of which I am one, right? But I just think our democracy is better when
the people
can see their own voice reflected in the final product and in representation. And so, again, to me, this is not about Zeke Cohen or Brandon Scott or Nick Mosby or any of us, because most of us, frankly, won't be there, right? This doesn't happen for another 10 years.
Right.
So it's not about any of us, but it is about what is the best system of governance for Baltimore. And I would argue, and I know that through this show, you've been essentially arguing that our current system is not working for Baltimoreans, that it is too top heavy, that once again, we see an executive that is essentially unchecked by the legislative branch. And so to me, this is about, one, balancing power, but again, really empowering people to have input in government.
No, I agree. And Councilman Cohen, I can tell you that you're going to be striking that you be striking that drum in my heart every time you talk about bringing people into the process. And as well as, and as we've both said many times, it's not about the people in current positions. It's about the structure of the organization that is the mayor and city council of Baltimore. And until we really address that situation where the legislative branch has equal power to the executive branch, it doesn't have to be fully equal, but it has to be a heck of a lot more balanced than what it is. We're going to continue to have these little melodramas play out where the will of the people is it just doesn't show up in our governmental processes. And go ahead, sir.
Sorry, let me just jump. I think that's absolutely right. Like, I think, we all learned at a very young age that checks and balances are an important part of how a government should be structured. And whether you are the executive, the legislative, the judicial, right, no one branch should be able to completely dominate the process. And I think we should be constantly striving to get to a better system and, frankly, a more collaborative system. Because, again, I think what you've seen over this term and in the past terms is that because the mayor has so much concentrated power, there are all these little conflicts that arise where at the end of the day, the mayor's going to win 9 out of 10 of them. But it looks messy. It looks sloppy. And look, for me, I think we should be trying to get to a place where we're all working together for the betterment of the people that we serve. And that doesn't mean that there's not going to be conflict or disagreement and, part of the legislature's job is to hold the executive accountable and hold our city agencies accountable and expect better outcomes from them. But I think the current alignment, the current arrangement has just led to a really messy situation. And again, nothing on this current mayor, but also what I also think it does is inherently lead to an increased likelihood that that one person is going to be tempted by corruption because they have so much power. And the old saying is power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, we've seen with past administrations, far too many mayors gone down because of leveraging the Board of Estimates in ways inappropriate, which is our city spending board. So I just think, I know that every mayor says, when Brandon Scott was city council president, he said, we have to even the power. And then when you become mayor, folks don't want to do that. And I fully understand that. But I actually think it would be in all of our best interest, including the mayor, to have a more equal system of governance.
Of course. And as you know, as you mentioned, absolute power absolutely corrupts. And that's because when the players of the game understand I only need to convince one guy.
That's right.
Rather than, be it equally selling whatever it is they're selling to everyone, because they need everyone to be on board with things. It just leads to the potential for malfeasance, right? And at the end of the day, what I see from our what our mayor is not Brandon, but the mayor's seat should be someone that is a consensus builder. They should be able to go out, not someone that just does absolute dictating, right? So at the end of the day, what we're looking for is someone that can go out and build consensus around their agenda and the consensus around the things they want to sell, not just come into the room and say, here's what we're doing and agree with me, or we're going to have another dramatic situation play out that I'm going to win anyway, right? And every time that you speak about balancing the power within the city government, every time you speak about bringing people into the processes. And when I read your proposal, obviously, for me personally, it strikes right at the heartstrings. And I wanted the people of Baltimore to hear it, directly from you as far as what your proposal and your plan is. And, Councilman Cohen, you're always welcome to the show. Anytime you have anything going on as far as, legislation that you want the people of Baltimore to know about, City Voters Live is open to you to come in and discuss it at any time. So take us away today with what's going on in the campaign trail.
Absolutely. Well, and again, I want to thank you, Desmond, because I think having more of a long form platform to share some of the nuance and complexity of legislation is really important, just on a civic level, right? Like it's, I did a lot of interviews, but in a quick 1 minute bite, it's sort of hard to get.
Hard to digest, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is, complicated stuff, and what's a pocket veto, and what's, why, what does it mean to have a commission, and all these different things. So I think having this platform, I really appreciate, because I think it gives your viewers just more of the nuance and more of the complexity, because all of this, none of it is simple. I think it's important to know that. I think often when folks see us, in a 1 minute TV interview, it seems like this is all like simple and easy and good or bad. And, often it's messy and complicated. And so I appreciate, again, you having this platform and giving us all an opportunity to get in the weeds and, share with folks. And then, people can agree or disagree, but at least can understand the
information's there
and the information, which I think is important. No, look, we're less than 90 days out from Election Day. I'm continuing to love it. It's been just a joy and a pleasure to get to see our city and get to visit, neighborhoods that, frankly, when you represent one district, you tend to spend the vast bulk of your time in that district. And you kind of forget that, like, there's 13 other parts of the city that are also vibrant and have challenges and have, institutions and community organizations. The one thing I will say that I really come, I think, to appreciate most from doing this campaign is just the level of civic engagement that we have in our city. Yeah. And that people really do want to participate, whether that's at the community association level, whether that's, as in Northeast Baltimore, along the York Road corridor, they're fighting back against the crematorium that they don't want in their community. Just the level of participation that I think we have in Baltimore, I think is really special and unique. And I don't think you see that in every city in America. Like, what I do love is people, I think, really feel a connection, good or bad, with their local representative, with their city council person. People have all these different ways to get involved and participate. And I just feel like people care about their neighborhood and their community in a way that I think is unique in our city. And I think it's why Baltimore is poised for a renaissance. It is not going to be, like we've seen in other cities where we just gentrify out all of our, working class communities and bring a whole bunch of folks from outside in. I think we have the capacity to both grow and develop our city, but support and retain the Black working and middle class that really built this town and keep folks here and, continue to strengthen our Latino community that has come in the last 15 years from Central and South America, and support our Jewish community, our Orthodox Jewish community in Northwest Baltimore. And, that is what is beautiful about Baltimore, is that we have all of these vibrant, different communities. And I think, the question for the mayor, the city council, the all of us is, how can we bring people together, build coalitions, and rebuild our city after all of this population decline in a way that really honors what already exists, while also acknowledging that, cities grow and cities change, and we have to be forward looking. So that's what I've really most enjoyed about my campaign, is just getting to meet communities and getting to see people and, getting to understand just the nuance and complexity of our neighborhoods.
You said two things. This is a neighborhood town, right? And people are passionate about what's going on around them. Those are two things I can attest to as a transplant here myself. I really loved how, the neighborhoods are strong. There's so many of them. there's so many neighborhoods, in this city. And Baltimore is a passionate people, not just about their Ravens. It is a passionate town. And it is fun to get out and engage with and absorb that energy from the people around you. And you always find those little jewels every time you go around to a new community or new neighborhood, and you see there's always a new street that you didn't know about. It is very, very energizing, and
it is, and you got to come correct. I mean, that's the other thing I like, is that people in this town
will let you know.
Yeah, they will. Like, if you come with that nonsense, like, people will. There is this like self-protective thing in Baltimore where I think we are. Because there have been so many promises made and not kept, I think people are cynical is not quite the right word, but just leery of like snake oil salesmen and, folks who would come here and try to, make a reputation, then dip on out or leverage it for something else. Like, there is just this like self-protective thing that I actually really like in the city, because
it's authentic. Yeah.
It's got to be real.
Yeah, good stuff. I tell you, Councilman, thank you so much. And I think the viewers will be uniquely interested in this redistricting process. Like you said, it doesn't happen again for a while, but I think the next time that it does come around, it does need to be equitable. And I love the idea of including the people and having a commission that's representative, and it's not just lip service at community charrettes. So as this bill progresses, I'll tell you what. Leave us with what's the current status and what's next for the bill.
Yeah, so the bill goes to committee next, right? It was entered last Monday into what's called first reader, which is where the city council hears it and then it gets assigned to a committee. It will be heard in that committee.
Okay.
And it's actually, I should make it clear to the viewers, it's actually two bills. One is a charter amendment,
Gotcha.
and then the other is a companion bill that essentially explains what happens once the charter amendment goes into effect. And so for this bill, it'll go through the regular legislative process, which is then committee and then back to the city council for second and third reader. And then if it passes, it will go on the ballot. And then the voters will have an opportunity to vote, which
this November.
Again, to me is a great thing. I think the more people can feel a sense of ownership, I think the better.
Got it. Thank you so much, Councilman. All right, have a great weekend. And do something fun with those kids this afternoon.
I will. All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.